Fans, what do you say? What do you know? What are you doing? Hope everything is well. Taking a little break today from the prediction game. See what happens with the Canelo fight. It's going to be interesting. But today I want to talk about something that's kind of irking me a little bit, and it's the knock that I've seen over the years on the great Rocky Marciano. Now, before I get into this, I want to tell you, there's an obvious bias that I have because I'm an Italian American. Italian American, and my parents came here. My parents are first generation. Grandparents came here in the early 1900s. To us, my parents grew up in the ghetto in New York City, struggling. Didn't finish high school. Worked in the factories, fought in the war, the whole 9 yards. And to them, Rocky was just Rocky, Joe DiMaggio, Yogi Berra, Italian Americans, that type were just heroes. They were symbols of what potentially, success that they could have in America. So they were heroes, and you know what? That was passed on to me. So I tell you straight up, I'm a huge Rocky Marciano fan. But when I'm analyzing his ability, and his as a fighter, and his contribution to the sport, I think I can set that aside. And you know what? Because there are plenty of other Italian American fighters who I don't give that kind of credit. Okay, a guy like Rocky Graziano, who was a tough guy. He had one punch. Yeah, he had one quality. He had a punch. Other than that, he was a punching bag. A guy like Jake LaMotta. Jake LaMotta was a really good fighter. Not a great fighter, really good fighter. Willie Pep, that's another video, because I think he's one of the greatest ever. But I think I can be unbiased about this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Rocky. First of all, let's talk about his physical qualities. Okay, Rocky was listed at 5'11". There's no way he was 5'11". He was between 5'9" and 5'10". At his prime in his fighting, when he fought in the heavyweight division, he fought between 184, 189, 187 pounds. Small heavyweight. Reach, 68-inch reach, 68 inches. Next time you watch welterweights fight, okay, look at the tail of the tape. You see guys in that weight class who have 70, 72-inch reaches. So Rocky was like a dinosaur. He had those little short, compact arms. Height, reach, weight. Rocky was constantly at a disadvantage in everybody that he fought. Most of the heavyweights at that time, the guys that the good guys who we fought were mid to high 190s, low 200s. At that weight, it's that 10, 15 pounds is significant. You get up to the higher weight now, these guys are fighting at 230, some guys at 250. There's not a big difference there because of the percent, because of the ratio of weight to weight difference. Okay, think about that. Look at the lighter weights. Guys who are 6, 5, 6, 7 pounds. The difference between a junior lightweight and a lightweight, you're talking about significant difference, with 5 to 6 pounds because of the relative weight, the relative difference. Okay, so you got to take that into consideration. But anyway, Rocky was at a disadvantage in just about every fight that he fought. The other thing is, a lot of people don't realize, Rocky got into the fight game, fought his first professional fight when he was 25 years old. I want you to think about the greatest heavyweight you ever seen, and where the peak of their career was. 25, 28 years old. Rocky didn't start till he was 25 years old. Okay, and he did not have an extensive amateur career. The guy thought he was going to be a catcher in the major leagues. His first love was baseball. He got into boxing in the Army. Had a very small amateur career, and then got directly into the pro game. A lot of guys did that back then because it was about, back then it was poor people fighting to support their families, and Rocky was no different. So you got to take those things into consideration when you look at Rocky as the entire package of Rocky Marciano. Now, the big knock, the one that you hear, is that Rocky fought nobody. Well, I kind of disagree with you. I disagree with that when you look at the actual guys that he fought. Let's look at the ones that are most prominently mentioned, leading up to Rocky's championship. Okay. The most prominent one that you see is Joe Louis. Now, admittedly, Joe Louis was an old guy when he came back and fought Rocky. Joe had gotten screwed by the federal government after all that he did, all the time that he gave to them in the service, all of the charity work that he did. They screwed him on his taxes, and he had to come back and fight, which was a travesty, absolute terrible thing. Joe came back, strung together some wins. I think he was he was undefeated in his comeback, 8-0, 9-0, whatever it was. Certainly not the fighter that he was before. He gets in there with a young Rocky Marciano. Interesting fight early on. Rocky's feeling him out. Joe's using his length and size to kind of keep Rocky at bay. And then eventually, 8th round, it catches up to him, and Joe gets hurt bad, gets knocked out of the ring. His career is finished. That's a pattern that you see with Marciano. He beat guys. He either finished their careers or they were never. Most of those guys were never the same. Rocky gets in there, and now he's got a title fight against Jersey Joe Walcott. Rocky's 31. Joe's about 37. Joe is a tremendous fighter. You look up "cute" in the dictionary, and you see a picture of Joe Walcott. Joe had a tremendous jab. He had tremendous footwork. He could punch with either hand. He was a durable guy. Good, solid fight. Had some great fights with Ezra Charles and Joe Louis. Just tremendous fights. Joe was a champ. 37 years old. Yeah. Time out on that one. Let's take a look. People don't realize this. Take a look just at even modern history. Look at some of the heavyweights who were champions when they were older in their age. You got names like Ali, 37, Holyfield, 38. Obviously, Foreman at 45. The Klitschko brothers, 42 as a champ, and the other guy was, I think, 38 when he won the title. You go to the lighter weights, you got guys like Bernard Hopkins. So this whole thing there, the guy was 37 years old. He was freaking. He had one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. It was a bunch of baloney. Rocky fights Joe twice. Okay. Tremendous fight, the first fight, 13 rounds. I'm going to talk a little bit about the qualities that led to Rocky winning that fight. 13 rounds. Rocky's taking a thumping from Joe for those 13 rounds. It's give and take. Rocky's giving Joe the business too. But here's the deal. Rocky was able. Joe slowed down. Rocky didn't. And then in the 13th round, Rocky hits him with a shot. If any of you have never seen it, you got to see it. YouTube it, whatever you want to do. To me, it's the greatest knockout punch ever thrown in boxing. All right, you want to know what it means to really put a man to sleep? It was scary. It was scary, that shot that he hit Walcott with. Year later, they fight again. Rocky knocks him out in the first round. Walcott never fights again. Okay, that's the kind of power that Marciano had. He ruined fighters. He really did. What he did to Rex Lane, that's another story. Put the damn guy Carmine Vingo. Was it Lane? No, Carmine Vingo. Put him in the hospital. And the guy physically was never the same. That's the kind of power that Rocky had. All right, so he wins the title. Now let's look at the two guys that he fought, the two most prominent guys that he fought that that a lot of guys who don't like Rocky have put bring up. So let's talk first about Ezra Charles. Ezra Charles, one of the greatest light heavyweight champs ever, won a heavyweight title, held a heavyweight title and a light heavyweight title. All right, now coming into the fight with Marciano. Charles admittedly was up in his career, definitely. I think in his last 20 fights, he had lost 4 or 5 fights, okay? But make no mistake about it, when you look at the fight, he was still a tremendously skilled guy. And again, the disadvantages, you just look at them in terms of, the physical attributes were there. Charles was tall and long and rangy and just tremendous boxer, had tremendous boxing ability. Rocky beats him in a controversial 15-round decision in the first fight, and then annihilates him in the second fight. All right, knocks him out in the 8th round, beats him up, and then knocks him out. After that, Charles is never the same again. I think he fights maybe 15, 20 more times after that, and he has a losing record. And believe me, that has a lot to do with the beating that he took from Marciano over 2 fights. So I think that's a bad rap on Rocky. And by the way, I don't know if I had mentioned this, but Rocky was 31 and Charles was 33. So it's not like he fought an old man. They were of comparable age. Ezra was much more experienced fighter. So that one I think is blown completely out of proportion. That was a good solid fight. The other one is Archie Moore. Archie Moore, admittedly, the old mongoose, who nobody knows how freaking old he was. I mean, it's just but he was certainly significantly older than Rocky. But boy, here's the interesting thing: when you look at Archie Moore, you look at Archie Moore before he fought Rocky. Last 51 fights before he fought Rocky, he's 50-1, light heavyweight champ. Right? He's light heavyweight champ when he fights Rocky. After he fights Rocky, he fights another 8 years and compiles 36-3 record over that 8-year period. I think his last fight was against Ali, 1962, 63, whenever the heck it was, maybe even later than that. But so this whole idea about Archie Moore, being a bum when he got finished when he fought Marciano, it's a myth. It's a bunch of nonsense. So I think on the who Rocky fought, they were old men, blah blah blah. I don't think that holds water. I really don't think when you actually look at the facts. I just don't think that that holds water at all. Now, let's talk about qualities. Let's talk about the qualities that Rocky had as a fighter that I think set him apart in many respects from other fighters. 3 things. 3 qualities that are rarely present at the same time at a supreme level. He may be one of the only guys that I know had these 3 qualities at the level that he did. Number 1, pitcher. By being a pitcher, I'm talking about the ability to punch. Rocky could punch with both hands. He had pulverizing power with both hands. As I mentioned, he hit guys. He hit them in their arms. They couldn't lift their arms by the time he did away with them. His knockout power was unbelievable. Go look at the knockout against Walcott if you need to know what kind of punching power the guy had. He had tremendous leverage on his punches. One of the things that Rocky did is that he used his physical, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, used his physical disadvantages to his advantage. You look at the torque that he had on his punches, the way that he had big, strong legs, the way that he used his legs was just, uncanny. So he was just a tremendous pitcher. Maybe pound for pound, the most powerful puncher in the history of boxing. Okay, you guys are going to mention Ernie Shavers and other guys. There's a legitimate argument to be made. But he's up there. There's no doubt about it. Okay? 1. Number 2, ability to catch. Okay? Take a punch. Chin. Rocky was as durable a fighter as ever lived. Okay? Knocked down twice, 2 flash knockdowns. Archie Moore, Jersey Joe Walcott. Both of them early in the fight in the first round, not really hurt, got up immediately, and then admittedly took punishment in both fights before finishing both fighters. So his chin is up there with the greatest of all time. Punching power, chin. Last, maybe no fighter in the history of fighting had more stamina than Rocky. Rocky trained like an animal. He trained like an animal. He was in the gym constantly, never stopped. And his training sessions are legendary. But that's an innate quality also. You can train a lot, but you have to have the innate physiology to be able to last like that, like Rocky did. So his stamina was unprecedented. Rocky was an unrelenting fighter. He never took a step back. He was perpetual motion. He was constantly throwing punches, and he was as powerful in the 15th round and as active and as powerful in the 15th round as he was in the first round, and did not lose power. Okay, that's unbelievable. Think about those 3 qualities. How do you beat a guy like that? It takes a real special guy to beat a guy like that. Pick out some guys in your mind. Some guys, the Ernie Shavers guys, maybe the lighter weight, a guy like Julian Jackson. Even a guy like Tommy Hearns was an unbelievable fighter. These guys had their weaknesses when it came to those, those categories. So a guy like Shavers who got knocked. I think he had a great record. I think he lost 6 to 8 fights. I think all of them were by knockouts. Didn't have tremendous stamina. He was knocked out a lot of guys early in the fight. You put him in against a guy who could take a punch, give a punch, and keep fighting, and there's no chance. He's not in the same category as a guy like Marciano. So I think you need to look at it. You need to look at it that way. Just a real special kind of fighter. The other thing is, here we go. Marciano, one of the knocks against Marciano was, look at him. He was crude. He had no boxing ability. He was a one-trick pony, with the power. Absolutely not true. Okay? Absolutely not true. You watch films of Marciano training. Oh my God, it was horrible. He'd jumping rope and shadow boxing and throwing punches like that, hitting heavy bag, boom, one punch, and that. I mean, he looked very, very crude. Watch him fight. Watch his fights. Rocky was as cute as they come, and as I said, he used his physical disadvantages to his advantage. I'll give you an example. If you watch Rocky when he came in on you, he fought with most of his weight on his back foot, and he kind of leaned his head back. Okay, what did that entice? Mostly fighting guys who were taller with a longer reach. You're going to get guys who are going to look to overextend and look to hit Rocky. Boom, you're falling right into his power. Okay. Other thing is, watch his infighting. Rocky would put his head on your chest when he got inside, but then what he would do is he would change height dramatically, and he would change his horizontal orientation, and he would be able to work you from the left side to the right side by bending at the waist. And what he did is he used that along with his legs, because he got low, to propel his power. I think Rocky was through one of the most devastating uppercuts ever in the heavyweight division. Tyson had a great uppercut. You watch Rocky's fights and watched his uppercut. I never saw a guy get that kind of torque and that kind of power on an uppercut as him. He had that flexibility in his waist, where he was able to really get tremendous torque on his punches. And Rocky could make you miss. Rocky was cuter than you think. He was, he got hit. There's no doubt about it. And if you were at a distance, and you were keep him at the end of the jab, he had a hard time with you. Tough time that he had with Walcott was because that Walcott was able to keep that distance, and it gave Rocky a really tough time for those 13 rounds. But as I said, those three qualities come back to haunt you. Okay, because you beat the guy up for 13 rounds, right? He's coming at you the whole time, but you don't hurt him significantly, right? You don't stop him, and the guy and you tire out, and he's still going, and he's got that power going into the 13th round, and it's lights out. So, those are qualities that Rocky doesn't get credit for. You got to really look at his fights to see it, to see that. So. Now here's the other wrap. Here's the last one. I know this is kind of long because I got a lot of thoughts about Rocky. But the other thing is comparisons. Tyson would have knocked him out. Can you imagine him fighting Ali? Could you imagine what Lennox Lewis would have done to him? Blah, 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 blah. Well, listen, I think it's preposterous to make these types of comparisons when you're talking about straight up guys fighting one on one. Who would have won in the head-to-head competition? Rocky was 187 pounds at his biggest. Guys today, I think Lewis was 240. Look at guys now. You got Fury at 280 pounds. I mean, these are big guys. And I don't care what you tell me, size matters in the fight game. Okay, that's why you got different weight classes. And as I said, the difference in weight is a function of the ratio of the weight difference to the total weight. Okay. So a guy who's 225 could fight a guy 15 pounds heavier, and they're pretty much on the same ground because of the ratio. You look at the guys at the lighter weight. A guy at 135 with a 15-pound disadvantage fighting a guy 150 is a huge disadvantage. It's huge. There's a huge difference. So you have to take that into consideration. So Rocky at 187, Tyson at 220. It's a huge weight difference. It's a huge difference. But that's why I don't make those comparisons. If you want to have an all-time list of who would have beat who, Rocky is not at the top of the list of heavyweights. He's not. But when you look at fighting qualities, the ones that I mentioned before, okay, and now you want to talk about the greatest fighters, Rocky's close to the top of the list. I don't know if I had mentioned it, but the fight with Lewis, Rocky takes him out. Say Lewis is an old man. That would have been some fight. Rocky and Joe early on, at the peak of at their careers. One of the greatest technical fighters, that 6-inch punch, Joe could throw in combinations, knock you out with either hand. Okay, against a guy who could take the best punch, who could freaking go at you, who had a great punch, and who could keep coming at you for 15 rounds. That's some fight. That's some fight. I don't know who wins that fight. That's a tremendous, tremendous fight. But anyway, so I mean, that's my take on on the modern generation versus the older generation. It's like saying, yeah, Jesse Owens wasn't much because Usain Bolt would have ran circles around him. Jesse Owens ran a 10-3 or 10-4 100 in the Berlin games, and Usain Bolt is one of what 9-4, 9-5 or whatever the hell he's doing. Guys in high school are running 10-4 now. It's a ridiculous comparison. Different era, different different thing. But so you got to when you're making these comparisons in the boxing game, you got to look at the qualities. You got to look at the qualities of the fighter, and when you look at it that way, Rocky is. I don't put him ahead of Muhammad Ali. There's a couple other guys that I think are maybe Lewis. Lewis is ahead of him, but Rocky is right up there. Toward the top of the list. So anyway, that's my take on the great Rocky Marciano. I know a lot of you guys probably have a completely different take. You're saying, "Hey, look at this freaking old Italian guy here. Yeah, he's biased. He can't see the truth. Rocky was a bum, the whole bit." Hey, I'd be interested on your take. I'm willing to go at it with you. I mean, we can talk about this honestly. But so that's my take on the great Rocky Marciano. All right. Please, you got comments, you agree, you disagree, please leave them here. Be interested in conversing with you as I have in the past. And, like I always say, this boxing thing is just a game, but life is the reality. And you get knocked down, you got to get back up, and you got to keep throwing punches, like my daddy used to say. Got to keep in there and keep going in life. Hey, I wish you the best for you, health, wealth, and happiness. You for your family as well. And until we meet again, maybe my next one is the post-Canelo fight. Maybe that'll be the next one. But until then, peace out. Old school saying here, nothing but love.